I want to speak a bit about, in this video, about the whole concept of so-called street fights. That is, let's say, confrontations in public places, um, violent confrontations. You know, this is something that's always made me quite uncomfortable. Whenever I've been, say, coming home from the cinema or something, and I see two people fighting in the street and people crowding around, it's always made me uncomfortable. I'm not intimidated because they're fighting with each other. I've nothing to fear, but it's because I find it depressing. It's a big problem in this country, in the UK, sort of this sort of mindless behaviour, but it exists everywhere. I'd like to say a bit about what I think of street fights. I really do think they're utterly moronic. Um, Quite often they're based on alcohol, people not being able to handle their alcohol, or just idiots going out of their way to find a fight. Sometimes when they're not even drunk, they just want a fight, and they will find any excuse for it, whether someone's looked at them the wrong way or whatever. Sometimes muggings that have gone wrong, or I really think it's moronic. I'll tell you why. In a street fight or a fight in a public place, um, the issues around sort of strength and endurance and so on are much, much less than they would be in a controlled fight, because there's a lot of other factors involved. Now, it doesn't matter how strong you are, or how tough or whatever. If you're in a street fight and you're just throwing fists and say you push your opponent, or your opponent falls out into, say, a road, and then gets hit by a car, that's something that would never happen in a controlled fight situation. Then you'll end up on manslaughter charges. Um, and there's many cases of these sort of things happening. And when you see people in a street fight sort of throwing each other around, and there's a whole range of factors that can get concussion on the pavement. And there's a lot of physical factors that have nothing to do with physical strength. Um, and people might, when I've raised these issues before in sort of debates, people have been like, "Oh, you're gay." That seems to be the standard response for anyone that's using reason and using their fucking common sense. It does annoy me because there's really, really no need for it. The only time I think physical violence is justified in that sort of situation is if you're defending yourself and you really have no choice, or you're defending a more vulnerable person. Now, there are certain circumstances I would use violence. If some guy tries to mug me, and I have time to sort of prepare for it, if I see him coming, or if I can react quickly enough, of course I'm going to use some sort of force to try and stop him, punch if necessary. Um, or if I'm with my girl and someone dares attack her, they're going down, no doubt about that. But even in those circumstances, I would judge the situation. I would use violence to protect someone, like a female friend, a vulnerable, another sort of friend that maybe wouldn't necessarily be able to defend themselves against an attack or whatever. There's certain circumstances where it would be justified, but I honestly believe 90 to 95% of the time street fights can be avoided. Um, I'm the sort of person, if some guy insults me, I won't start a fight with him. I might get a bit pissed off and maybe throw some verbal insults back. And I've had to put up with chavs, which is the expression in this country for yobs, mindless people, thugs, whatever you want to call them, hurling insults at me for no reason. And it probably gets to me more than it should. But to my line of thinking, I've done nothing to them. What the hell? what's wrong with these people, and so on and so on. And yeah, the truth is I've wanted to flatten them, but then the rational side of me thinks, well, look, I'm near my house. If I do that, they'll just get up or get their mates or something because of cards, and they'll just come to my house and put the windows in. So sometimes you have to use your mind. You have to really think about the situation. And anger is a powerful thing. Goodness knows there's been... I've said before, anger is one of my weaknesses, and there's been many occasions I've wanted to flatten people. And there's certain politicians I've wanted to, frankly, give a black eye to. Certain TV presenters, tabloid editors, and so on. But ultimately, those are, let's say, rants based on emotions. I probably wouldn't go through with it. So that's why I never say, oh, I'm going to knock out Jeremy Kyle or I'm going to knock out Dominic Mohan. I think they would deserve it, but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Getting back to street fights, when I see it, it just depresses me. And, you know, it's all over YouTube. People boast about it like it's something to boast about. If you want to fight, you should become a martial artist and enter a ring. Become a boxer, become a taekwondo expert, become a karate fighter, an MMA artist, whatever. Because there's a world of difference between a controlled martial art fight and a street fight. In a controlled martial arts fight, whether it be boxing or MMA or whatever, and I know there's debates between those sports, but one thing they all have in common is they are controlled. They're controlled aggression. Now, to someone who doesn't follow those sports, they may think it's mindless violence, but you have to consider lots of factors. There are rules. Most of the time, the fights are not based on personal animosity, in most circumstances. There's almost always a ringside doctor if things do go wrong. There's a referee. There's cornermen. There's rounds. There's so many factors which are different from a street fight. A street fight is just mindless throwing punches and hoping for the best. And some people are tough and some people can inflict real damage in a street fight. But it's nothing to shout about. In my opinion, street fights are just mindless thuggery. Whereas martial arts, yes, it's violence, yes, it's aggression, but it's controlled aggression. It's an ancient form of art. Pugilistic art, that's what it is. And you have to know those sports to understand that. I appreciate why people don't like them, the people who don't like them, I respect their view, but I would hope at least they would differentiate between, for example, a boxing match and a street fight, because there really is a world of difference. In a street fight, you don't get guys sort of holding each other's hands up afterwards and patting each other in the back and saying good fight and stuff. Now, street fights are just mindless thuggery, and it doesn't make you a big man to be involved in a street fight. Unless you're defending yourself, unless it's a necessary situation. But I do believe in most circumstances it's not necessary. And even if it's a case of, for example, you're defending a woman or something, even then violence can be avoided. You can just tell the guy to apologise to her, square up to him in that way. But I believe it takes a bigger man to walk away from that sort of fight than a guy who will go out looking for a fight. And I made another video about why I'm put off nightlife, because I think this sort of shit happens all the time. I don't want to exaggerate it. It's not like I say all the time. It's not like every time I go out I see it happening. It's not that bad, but it does happen. And it isn't just guys. You get girls involved in these sort of altercations as well. And, when people are drunk, they're vulnerable. And they do stupid things, and people could get seriously injured. And you can laugh at that and say, I'm being prudish or whatever, but you just have to look at the dynamics of a street fight to see that I'm basically speaking sense. And that's it, really. My message is, if you want to fight, just become a martial artist. I honestly believe 90 to 95% of street fights can be avoided, and people who encourage them, like gather around and cheer it on, they should be ashamed of themselves. This is nothing to, celebrate. It's just stupidity. And people have been seriously injured in these situations, killed even. It just depresses me, really. Um, and there's a world. It's a world apart from arranged, controlled martial arts. So that's my stance on that. Let me know your thoughts. And all I'm talking about here is common sense, rationale, civilized fucking behavior. That's it. I believe in most circumstances can be avoided. The only circumstances where it may be necessary is self-defense or defending someone who can't defend themselves. And that's it.